Hi there, welcome to the alcohol ink art community. My name's Laurie Trumpet Williams, and today we're going to be painting this adorable little bunny in a field of daffodils. We're going to be painting this with alcohol ink on NARA paper. NARA paper is a synthetic paper. It comes in different sizes, it comes in different shapes, it comes in black and it comes in white, and it even comes in a sticker format. NARA has a whole different wealth of sizes. There are pads, boards, all sorts of options. You can go to the NARA website and check that out. That is narasyntheticpaper.com, or if you're looking to order, you can order directly from Amazon. So today, again, we're going to be painting this bunny, and we're going to be doing it on, I believe this is a 6-inch round NARA, but the rounds come in a bunch of different sizes, as you can see here, even up to this super large size. It's a 12-inch circle, which is very cool. Without further ado, let's jump into the project and I will show you exactly how I created this lovely little bunny. Okay, jumping right in, I have this little printout of this cute little bunny, and what I'm going to do is transfer this image onto my circle. Now I don't want it to be dead center, and I also don't want it to be all the way to the bottom, so I kind of eyeball where I want it to be and position it, and then I put a piece of carbon paper, tracing paper underneath, and position it exactly where I want it to be, and then I will start tracing that image onto the NARA paper. So I'm going to speed this up just real quick, just so you can see the process but not waste your time. We want to jump right into the painting as soon as possible. Okay, and then once I'm done, I'm just going to remove that and you will see that the image has been transferred and I'm ready to start the painting process. Okay, before I dive into the painting, I just wanted to go over a few of the supplies and stuff that I'm going to be using for this. To start off with here, I have a couple of palettes. So what I do, I reuse palettes, and if I don't like to clean them out because I can repurpose that ink. So what I do is I'll cover up a palette with some aluminum foil. And then I'm using a pipette here and some isopropyl alcohol. And then today I'm also using Ranger inks. So the colors that I'm using are Patina, Limeade, Meadow, Sunshine Yellow, Honeycomb, Sunset Orange, and Rust. Oh, and also Caramel, although I don't think I actually ended up using the caramel in this video, but it is a nice color that complements those for this project. Starting with Patina, I'm going to drop a few drops into a weld palette here, and then I'm going to take my pipette and I'm going to add a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to dilute that. I want it to be very thin and watery. So I'm going to mix that up a little bit with the pipette. And then I'm going to turn my image upside down. I'm just going to drag some of that patina across the bottom. So I'll load some of it up into the pipette. And my pipette wasn't working very well, so I'm going to exchange it for a new one. Okay, so let me try this again. So now I'm going to drop some of this. Again, this is patina mixed with some isopropyl alcohol to make it very thin. And all I want to do here is just give it a little bit of a background, and nothing crazy, just a subtle little hint of blue in the background. In the end, you'll see that sort of ends up being kind of the sky a little bit. And so I'm going to take my blower here. This is one of the Tim Holtz blowers. You can get these from Ranger Ink. From their website, or I think they're also available on Amazon. And I just blow that around to dry the ink. So now I want to come in with some green. This is a Limeade, again, Ranger ink, and I'm going to just drop it, nozzle apply it all across the bottom. And I don't want to go all the way up. I just want to go, as high as I want the grass to go over the bunny. And so I just apply some of it there, and then I'm going to come in with a little bit of Meadow, and I'm going to drop just a few drops of Meadow. I just want the grass to have some contrast in color, some dark and light. Then using a cut up credit card, I'm going to drag the ink up and down in the direction the grass would grow. This is how I'm going to create my grass. Real simple, fun, easy technique to create grass and texture. And now I'm going to come in and apply a little bit more of the green. This is the meadow along the bottom. And continue the same process with the card and dragging it up. And I just keep going with this just a little bit longer until I'm happy with the way it looks. I found it's a little bit easier sometimes to turn it upside down and drag and have some of the shorter, create some little shorter grasses towards the front. For the next step, I'm putting a little bit of color into my palette. So I put Sunshine Yellow, and then I also put Honeycomb. And those two colors are what I'm going to use to paint the daffodils. And to paint the daffodils, just real simple, I'm just dropping in ink, letting it bloom a little bit, and kind of figuring out where I want these daffodils to be positioned. And there's one I did a little sideways, and then they kind of have these little petals that kind of fall off to the side. And then I came back in with Honeycomb, which is a little bit darker shade, to go across the bottom, just to give it a little bit more interest. And here you're not really depicting the daffodils precisely. All you want to do is just give that little illusion that they're there. And that's really easy to do with alcohol ink. Basically, you just dab the color down there where you want them, and the ink almost paints itself, honestly. Real fun, and I don't spend a lot of time at all on this part of it. For this next step, I'm using a Sharpie, and this is one of those dual tip Sharpies that has a fine tip on it. And what I like to do is, before I start painting in the bunny, just to give me the reference, because what happens sometimes if you drop alcohol ink on top of the traced images, sometimes it disappears. So like my traced image disappears. I don't want that to happen for the eye and like where the mouth is. I want to make sure that I keep my scale and frame of reference there. So what I'm doing is I'm just going ahead and coloring over this with the Sharpie with the fine tip. You can use the wide tip too, but just be very careful. You can get a pretty fine design with that, but I really like these dual tips. I think they work the best. And all I'm doing here is I'm just putting the mouth in and the eye. That's all I'm doing right at this stage. Now next I'm going to use the ink in my palette. So I have Sunshine Yellow in there so far, and I also have Honeycomb, but now I'm going to add in some Sunset Orange and a little bit of Rust. So Sunset Orange and Rust over here in the right side of the palette, and I'm going to use those colors to paint in the bunny, because I want them to have varying color to help, and this is going to help me establish values and give the image some depth, not just like I'm just coloring the image in with one color. But I do start out with the Sunshine Yellow as the first pass. Starting with the Sunshine Yellow, I'm using a number 6 round brush, and I'm just filling in the areas. So one of the things that you have to be careful here with is that your ink is not too juicy, and that's why we use a palette. So when you use the palette and you put the ink in the palette, some of the alcohol will begin to evaporate out. As the alcohol evaporates out, the ink becomes thicker and easier to work with and easier to control. And that's how I'm able to keep the ink from going outside the lines here. So I'm just going to continue with this bunny until I have my first pass completely covered with the Sunshine Yellow. Next, I switched to Honeycomb, and this honeycomb's a little juicier, but what I want to do here is sort of tap it around and add it and have it activate that yellow underneath and kind of blend with it. So you can see I'm dabbing it on with this same number 6 round brush, and I'm dabbing around the edges, because ultimately I kind of want the inside to be the yellow and sort of around the edges to be more of a darker color. But you'll see as we move through this process that I look at the reference image to see the darker areas, and that's where I try to make it dark, and the lighter areas is where I'm trying to leave the sunshine yellow. So right now I'm just adding a layer on top with honeycomb. And I am dabbing in here a little, switching back to the sunshine yellow just a little bit. And oops, I've got out of line just a little bit, so I'll show you what I do this is a great opportunity for me to show you with the NARA how you can clean it to white. I'll show you that in just a few minutes. Okay, so I'm finishing up with the pass for the honeycomb, and now I'm going to start in with my sunset orange. So again, I'm getting darker and brighter a little bit, tapping that in and blending it. So one of the things that I do when I paint with alcohol with this technique is I tap in color, but then also, because what happens when you tap in color is it reactivates the ink underneath, and the more you tap, the more it blends. And I really love it to have a very inky look when I'm doing these paintings, rather than, I'm not trying to create fur here or anything super detailed. I'm trying to do just a really quick representational, fun little cute painting. And so tapping and blending is a great technique to use here, and I think it's just adorable. So I'm just going back and forth a little bit between the orange and the honeycomb just to blend. Sometimes it's easier to turn it upside down to work. Don't forget to do that if you get the opportunity, or you're afraid that you're going to get your hands into ink that's not already dry or something like that. But sometimes also it gives you another perspective to look at. It helps you see areas that need to be darker and or have more intense value. Okay, so now I have the color down. I'm just going to do a little trick here because some areas need to be lighter in order to show depth and proper use of values. And one technique that I like to use is I will dab some of that lighter color onto the already painted ink, and what this does is reactivates the ink, and then I take a paper towel and I just dab straight up and down, and it lifts out the color there. And see how that lightens things up a little bit, and then it creates a more 3D effect because you're able to have lights and darks just like light would hit something. And to guide me through this, I reference the reference image that I use for this, and I will include that black and white image of the bunny that you can resize to your liking and transfer and use this as you see fit, but you can also use it as a guide to determine the dark and lights. And you can see I've lifted a little bit too much out of some areas, but my brush is damp, so I'm able to kind of dab back in some of the color, and then I'll also kind of add more. So I play back and forth a little bit until I have the colors and the depth the way I want them. That just adds a little bit more detail to the painting without having to put in a whole lot of effort. Okay, so I told you I had to show you how I clean up these areas where I got out of line. So one of my favorite tools to use for this is called a Fantastics. It is a product that it's spelled Fantastix, and you can get these of course on Amazon, or you can also get them at, I believe, Michael's and most craft stores. But essentially what it is a sponge. It's like a little sponge, and I dip it into the alcohol and then just rub it along the edges, and it lifts the ink right back to white. So not all synthetic papers will allow you to do this. NARA is one that will let you lift all the way to white, which can be very, very important when you're trying to create white, because a lot of times when you paint with alcohol ink it stains, and so being able to lift from all the way to white can be very, very important for some uses. Okay, so now's the fun part. We're going to put a little bit of our finishing touches on there. So we're going to color in the eye, and this I'm actually using the rust to do this because it's a darker color than the others that I've been using. And I'm using the same brush. I cleaned off the brush with the isopropyl alcohol, and then I wipe it off on my paper towel. I always work on paper towel. That's just something I always do, and I use that to clean my brushes. But so I'm able to paint in this eye a little bit darker with the rust color here. So now, using the same technique that I used to clean the edges, I'm going to use the brush with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on it to put a little bit of light in the bunny's eye. So what I did here is I just very gently touched down on the eyeball, and then with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol on the brush, not a lot. You have to put the alcohol on the brush and then dry the brush and then do it. So you have just a little bit. And then I can come back in with the Sharpie and kind of tighten it up a bit. To me, this is the most gratifying part of the painting because I'm able to like clean everything up. And when you're coming and you outline with that black, it's what makes everything really pop. And because this is a representational painting, I end up outlining pretty much the whole bunny with the black marker, and I just really like the way that gave it a little bit of a cartoony feel, because bunnies aren't really orange, but my bunny today is orange and he's kind of cartoony like, so the Sharpie accents really actually help a lot. And I'm drawing in some little eyelashes here. So fun. And we need some little whiskers, and these are also fun to do. So what I do when I do the whiskers is I start with the Sharpie and I just put it down and then I flick it outward, and what that does is it creates the whiskers where they're thicker at the base and lighter at the edges, so they're thinner at the edges. You vary the size of those as well. Now I'm going to go through and outline the entire bunny with the Sharpie, just to kind of make it pop a little bit. I find that the black edges make it pop. Okay, so I've switched now to a #1 liner brush, and I'm using the meadow that is thickened up in the palette to draw in the stems for my daffodils. And I'm starting at the base of each one of these and just kind of dragging down the brush to create the stems. Again, not a huge amount of detail here, just a little bit of a indication that they're there. And I'm going to also come in here and paint in some little leaves. Okay, I think I'm ready to do a little spritzing. So I'm going to put a little bit of the patina down on my palette, and that's what I'm going to use for just splattering a little paint onto the background. For the splatters, I'm going to actually use a deer foot brush, and I dip it and soak up some of that ink, and then I tried raking my finger, but I found this process works much better where I just tap the brush onto another brush like this to create splatters. So I'm coming in, I'm splattering the entire painting with some patina, and then I'm going to also use some sunshine yellow. And that's a wrap. Hope you like my little bunny. Hope you give it a try, and if you do, please share your copy and tag me, Laurie Trumpet, on the Alcohol Ink Art Community Facebook page, and I look forward to seeing your work. Thanks for watching.
Come learn, create, and share with us. It's a life-changing